YouTube, Dave here again, feeling a little bit better, so I thought I would get around to recording the video that I originally intended to record today, which is another viewer question. It actually kind of ties into the video I uploaded a little while ago, because it's all about print on demand and their impact on gaming, product prices, or the fears that someone might be duped into paying like a lot of money for a print on demand when they think they're getting the original item. So I just wanted to take a moment and actually kind of talk about this a little bit, because I absolutely love the DM's Guild and Drive-Thru RPG's print on demand service. I think it's absolutely excellent, and I take advantage of it as much as I can. There's a whole list of things on there right now that I want to just keep adding to my cart. I plan on making use of this service a lot in the future, because it's just, for me, there's a lot of stuff on there that I just never find, especially here in Nova Scotia. There's not the greatest retro RPG scene here in terms of used products or anything along those lines, and the few places that do stock them tend to charge eBay prices for a lot of the stuff that they have, and I'm just not interested in paying, through the nose to get something that's, 40 years old. So anyway, the first thing that I want to say, or the first question I want to answer is, do I think that print on demand will impact the prices of items going forward? And I think to a certain degree the answer is yeah, it's definitely going to. I noticed it almost immediately when the D&D Rules Cyclopedia was made available for print on demand. The Rules Cyclopedia, in the video that I actually did where I showed that this was now available print on demand, this is the day that it was made available, and at least through DM's Guild, and I showed the eBay listings for the original Rules Cyclopedias, and there was one that I think was around $80 or $60, but then the others were, $100, $200, $300. I think one of them was in the $400 range. So it's just absolutely crazy how much they were charging for this book. And about a month or so after the print-on-demand version came out, I did go back and do another check on eBay, and the prices had actually come down a fair amount. Instead of only having like one or two that was less than $100, suddenly there were about 5 or 6 that were around the $60 to $80 range. And the most expensive one, instead of being like $400, was listed at a little under $200, if I recall correctly, maybe just a little bit above $200. But the prices had dropped for that considerably, and in my opinion, that's nothing but a good thing. As much as I would love to have owned an original copy of the Rules Cyclopedia, I am not spending hundreds of dollars for anything. Even like when it comes to gaming systems, I wait until they drop, quite a bit in price before I even consider picking them up. So if I'm not going to spend, $400 on, a video game console that's brand new, I'm not going to spend $400 or $500 on an RPG book. So that was just absolutely ridiculous, and that was a change that I was happy to see. And I think for a lot of the higher priced items, as they become more and more widely available through print-on-demand service, I think we're going to see the prices, again, sort of lower down to what I would consider to be a reasonable price. I would not pay $100 for a D&D Rules Cyclopedia, but if I really wanted to have an original, I would consider spending up to $60 on it. It would be a hard decision, because I don't like to spend tons of money on my books, which is how I was able to build up the collection that I have in the first place. Was by, trying to wait until I could get them at a half-decent price. But if I really wanted to get an original, I would be willing to pay the $60 price tags that I'm seeing more commonly now, ever since the print-on-demand item came out. So, to answer that question, yes, I think it's something that's definitely going to happen. But some things are never going to change. So, for example, they have the first edition AD&D rulebooks available on print-on-demand right now. So they have the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. When you get those print on demand, what they're doing is they're actually printing the cover from the 2012 or 2011. It was right in there when Wizards of the Coast reprinted them. They were available for like hobby shops only at the time. And actually they were never made available in like larger retailers. So they were like game store exclusives. but that's the cover style that they're reprinting. So it's got like the brown leather, and it just has the little portrait sort of in the middle, which has like a part of the original cover shown on there, but it doesn't have the whole thing. So those books, because the reprinted style is not the same, I think those are always going to hold their value. For people who want the originals, then that's going to be fine. But for something like this that only has like the one style that's come out, then yes, it's going to affect the prices, but I think that's something that's just going to be better overall for the consumer. The next question is, am I concerned that people are going to try to pass off their print-on-demand items as genuine or original items, because they are genuine, but as the original items, and try to, you know, get top dollar for them? And it's one of those things that I can see happening, whether it's intentional or just someone like, I mean, for example, in my situation, I ended up getting a second copy of the Rules Cyclopedia just because of like shipping issues, and for the first one getting presumably lost, and getting it like almost 3 months later. So anyway, when it comes to you know, certain people, they may just say, well, I got a, you know, Rules Cyclopedia here. I don't need the extra copy, so I'm going to go on eBay and sell it. And what do? They go on eBay and they check what other, you know, Rules Cyclopedias are going for. And it may be an honest mistake. You know, it may not be something that they're trying to necessarily take advantage of. But if they go on there and see, like, well, hey, this is selling for like 80 bucks, you know, $80 to $100, so I'm going to charge around the same price, you know, and, you know, try to get that money out of it. So that's something that I can see happening, but there are certain things that you can do as the consumer to protect yourself against that. Now, the first thing I would say to anyone selling is you need to be 100% completely and totally honest when you're selling something. So if I were to say, try to just say I've got a D&D Rules Cyclopedia here, I'm charging you know, $80 for it, and someone gets it in the mail and they're like, well, this is the print-on-demand version that's only around like $40 Canadian, so I paid twice as much as I should have, and that's going to give you negative feedback, and that's something that will definitely, you know, affect your credibility later. So just be honest. If it's a print-on-demand version, just say it's a print-on-demand version. And, you know, it's up to you to charge whatever price you want, and I understand that, but I think you need to honestly just be fair about certain things. If you're charging, you know, the same or more if you're charging the same as the print-on-demand version, that's sort of okay, I guess, because you're, you know, recouping money potentially. But at the same time, you know, you already have the product, so you can ship it out immediately. So someone may want to get that without having to wait, you know, 3 weeks or longer to get it. So I can understand that. But again, just charge things fairly and make sure you're being transparent. So if it's a print-on-demand, just say, you know, D&D Rules Cyclopedia, this is a print-on-demand copy from DM's Guild. Received an extra one, don't need it, so I'm charging, you know, like say 30 bucks for it or 40 bucks for it. So anyway, that's what I would say for the seller. But for the consumer, and while, again, you know, it's understandable that you just want to trust what the seller is saying, as a consumer, I think you should do a little bit of research before you order things off of eBay. For example, if I'm selling a Rules Cyclopedia on eBay, the first thing you're going to want to do is just make sure that the picture is of the actual thing that's being sold and not just a stock photo. And if you're concerned about it, so if I had this picture here and it was against a completely white background with no like shadowing or anything, I would be suspicious, and I would contact the seller and just say, you know, I'm interested, but do you have a picture of the actual book that you're selling? You know, can you send it to me in email? I just want to see, you know, exactly what I'm getting. So that's the first thing to look for. But when it comes to something, especially like the Rules Cyclopedia, for example, the print-on-demand version is actually significantly thicker than the original. Now, this has to do with the fact that it's a thicker paper stock that's being used here. So one of the things that you can do is just ask for the dimensions of the book, like how thick is it? Not in terms of pages, because the pages is going to be pretty much the same, but ask them how, in like centimeters or inches or whatever you use for your measurement, ask how thick the spine is, because that will tell you. The original Rules Cyclopedia, I think, only comes up to about like 3/4 of the way up this here, and this looks to be a little over... maybe about 1.5 inches thick. I'll have to measure it and maybe put that in the description. But it's just one thing to know that this is a significantly thicker book than the one that was originally came out. Not in terms of page count again, because that's the exact same, but in the overall thickness. in terms of centimeters or inches of the actual product itself. So that's one thing to definitely sort of keep in mind. Another thing that I think is a very important thing to ask if you're buying something, especially that tends to go for quite a bit of money online, if you suspect that it might be a print-on-demand copy, or if you fear that it's a print-on-demand copy, then you can ask them to take a picture of the inside last page, because what they'll have for the print-on-demand versions is they will have a publisher's stamp on it. So as you can see, mine says Lighting Source UK Limited because I live in Canada, and right now all the drive-through RPG stuff that's being shipped to Canada is printed in the UK over in England. So again, you know, you can ask to see that back page and see if there's a publisher's note. So if you're living in the United States, it would probably be one that's based in the US, but the original books wouldn't have had that in there, because, you know, that's just not something. This is something that is a stamp that's put on there by the company that's reprinting them for these purposes. It would have been nice to have seen like a year on them, but it also has a QR code, and I know for a fact that back in 1991 QR codes didn't exist. So something else just sort of keep in mind when it comes to print on demand, if you suspect that something being sold online is actually a print on demand copy and not an original. Another thing that you can certainly look into when it comes to you know, thinking that something may be print on demand is finding out what type of cover it is. Now, this may not be the best example because honestly I don't know what the cover was like for these original books, but most of the print-on-demand items that are being done for like D&D books are typically available only as softcover, with a few exceptions. So paperback, softcover books. So, for example, I have the Creature Catalog here. This came out for, this is for the Rule Cyclopedia, so it's a companion to that. It has like the same logo and everything. But this is paperback. So the original, if the original was hardcover and this one's a softcover, then you automatically know that it's a reprint. Now again, this may not be the best example, just because I'm not sure if these were paperbacks or softcovers back in the day or not. But I do know, for example, let's just pull something off the shelf here. We have the, oh, here we go. So we've got the Eberron campaign setting. This has just recently come available print on demand as well. And I believe the print on demand is soft cover only. So the original 4th edition Eberron setting that was released was only ever released in hardcover. So if someone's saying I've got a 4th edition Eberron campaign setting here and they're charging what you think is kind of a high price, especially if it says that it's soft cover in the description, then you know it's print on demand. But just sort of do that research, because there's other things like the Fiend Folio for 1st edition AD&D, which comes in soft cover. You can also get the soft cover Rule Cyclopedia through DM's Guild as well. So if they're selling a soft cover version of the Rule Cyclopedia, then you should know off the bat that that is actually the print on demand version. So just like I said, a little bit of research that way will go a long way to protecting you against overpaying for things. Now certain things, actually before I get to that, let's look at modules. So they have a ton of modules available on DriveThruRPG, which I think is awesome. And I've got a couple of them here. So these are for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I've got Shrine of the Kuo-toa, which I got as a trade for an extra copy of another book that I had. And the B1 Search of the Unknown. So one of the first things is, again, looking at, hopefully you got a picture of the real item. And if you do, then that's awesome. But with this here, the covers are a lot glossier than you would have for the original adventures. So just for frame of reference, and it's probably not anywhere convenient for me, here we go. So just for frame of reference, this is what the original modules kind of look like. Now again, you know, it does reflect, but it's more of a matte, it's just more of a paper product. This here is much glossier, much shinier than this particular book. So if it looks really, really shiny or glossy on the picture, then there's a good chance that it is a print-on-demand item. Another thing that is a complete and total dead giveaway is the fact that where the maps are in the product. So for example, most of these old school modules, the way that they were put together, there's two things to look for beyond just the consistency of the texture of the cover. So the first thing is that these covers are not attached to the module itself. So you can just freely take the module out altogether. The module itself is just stapled, and the cover typically has information inside of it, usually in the form of maps. So that'll be on the inside covers of these the original items. With the print-on-demand items, the modules, first of all, the binding, the cover is attached to the rest of the adventure, and it's bound together, as you can see here. So you can ask to see a picture of the binding, because you can see, well, if I can get it here, you can sort of see the difference between one where the cover's attached and one where the cover's not. But you can also ask to see the inside cover, because as you can see, not only is the booklet attached, but the inside cover is blank, and the maps that would be on the inside of the cover are usually in the back. So it's another thing that you can do. So if you suspect someone, again, is trying to sell a print-on-demand item module and claiming it or trying to pass it off as the original, again, just ask to see the inside cover, ask to see the binding, to see if the cover's attached, and just ask to see where the maps are, because again, you know, these maps should have been on the inside cover of the original product. So something else to look out for there. And the last thing I'm going to say is there are a fair number of items, not a ton, but there are a few items that are available through the print-on-demand service that were never actually released commercially for stores or anywhere. So the two examples that I have are the Elemental Evil Player's Companion. So this came out around the time that Prince of the Apocalypse came out, and originally it was just a free PDF that you could download. However, through DriveThruRPG and through DM's Guild, they did make a print-on-demand service for it. So the print-on-demand is the only way to get a physical copy of this book. So if someone says that they've got an Elemental Evil Player's Companion that they're selling and saying that it's an original and not a print-on-demand, then you may want to call them out, because this was only available print-on-demand. Similarly, the Dreams of the Red Wizard Scourge of the Sword Coast adventure that I have here, this was part of the Sundering series, and this could be a little bit confusing because the first two Sundering products were the Murder in Baldur's Gate and Legacy of the Crystal Shard. And they were released as physical items. They came with the two booklets inside. They had a DM screen that shows like a map of the area and some important information. But even though this was part of the Sundering series, this was not something that you could buy in stores. The only way to get this was through, and it even says on the back here, that it is this adventure is designed to kick off the 2014 February through May season of the D&D Encounters official play program. So this is essentially what Adventurers League is now. That's D&D Encounters is what they called it before. But this was not something that was made commercially available. I believe the stores that ran it received kits that may have had something similar to this, but I don't. You would want to research that, because I can't remember if they actually had like a nice copy like this, or if it was just a series of just like the paperbacks, like not paperbacks, but like actual like paper covers, because they have the cover in here again, reproduced, which makes me feel like the original was probably just a paper cover, because it wasn't, again, to be sold commercially. It was just to be used in stores. There's also like Vault of the Dracolich that they have available now, and there was a 4th edition one involving a beholder. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they were not commercially available. So just again, you know, do your research on that. Look up and see what the original store versions were. So anyway, just some piece of advice. You know, do I think that people are going to try to take advantage of the DM's Guild service to try to jack up their prices and you know, profit by deceiving people? I don't think so. I mean, this isn't, you know, retro RPG collecting, I don't think is as cutthroat or sketchy as the retro video game collecting scene can be. And not that that's a dig at retro video game collectors. Most of them are absolutely fantastic people. But you'd hear stories every day about people selling like reproduction items that just have like a fake label over top of a different game. So, you know, that's something that can happen, but I don't think that's the way that it's going to happen with, you know, the old school D&D stuff. And if someone tries, hopefully this video will provide some useful information for the consumer to keep in mind as they're, you know, looking into purchasing some of these items. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate the support, and we will see you next time. Take care.